It's Kenneth Jones, Kenneth Jones.
And so are you currently employed?
No, I'm retired
And how long have you been retired?
since 2016.
And what did you do prior to retirement?
I was a firefighter, EMT with Henry County.
And how long were you a firefighter and EMT on the Henry County?
I was around 29 years.
And can you just give me a little bit of your background, like your training that you had to have to be a firefighter and an EMT?
Well, just your basic firefighting training that any fireman can go through.
And what all does that training include?
Well, basically, we're taught how to fight fire and just doing rescue techniques, and then on the EMT side, doing basically just ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. As far as the basic goes, just basic medical skills.
Basic medical skills, and does that include, you said A, B, and C? Is that part of the training that you get for, let me ask you, were you trained in CPR?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And when you talk about ABC, is that what you're talking about, CPR?
Well, I mean, that could pertain to that,
What, how many hours of training do you have in CPR?
I think it's a 40-hour research every year.
Every year? And what about the Heimlich maneuver? Were you trained in the Heimlich maneuver as part of your training for EMT?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
is that the same 40-hour training, or is that a different training that you go through combined?
I mean, it's all incorporated.
So when you learn CPR, you also learn the Heimlich maneuver?
Yes.
And over the course of your career, how many occasions have you had to administer CPR or the Heimlich maneuver?
God, I don't know. A lot.
Would over 100 be fair?
Oh, no, I'd say probably 25, 30 times.
Any of those times involve having to perform CPR or Heimlich on a child?
Now, I'm talking about CPR.
CPR, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll kind of
Talking about the Heimlich, maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe.
2 or 3 times with the Heimlich. So I'm going to back up on the CPR side. Out of those 25 times, how many times did that involve a child?
Maybe 4 or 5.
And do you recall the situations that caused you to have to perform CPR on the children on those 4 or 5 occasions?
I mean, like what caused it? What happened to them?
Yeah.
It could be anything from an automobile accident to some kind of trauma from, it's really hard to say. I can't remember.
Any, in the Heimlich maneuver, you said about 2 to 3 times?
Mm-hmm.
About how many times did that involve a child?
Maybe 1.
And on that one occasion, were you able to, what are you trying to,
Clear the airway.
What are you trying to achieve when you perform the Heimlich maneuver?
Just clear the airway.
Okay. And were you able to clear the airway on that one time that you performed on a child?
Well, I really don't think there was anything there, but we still had to, go through the motion of doing it.
And what was the result of that particular child? Did they have to go to the hospital? Did they survive the incident?
Yeah, they went to the hospital, but I don't remember the outcome.
And throughout your 20 plus years as an EMT and firefighter, did you work a certain shift at all, or did it just vary?
It was 24 on, 48 off.
And were you on duty on November the 17th of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall what hours you were working on that particular day? Or was that all 24 hours?
It's 24 hours shift.
At some point in time, did you get a call to the location of 1521 Lincoln Terrace?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall what time that call came in?
It was in the evening.
If you had an opportunity to review the Henry County Fire Department report, would that help to refresh your recollection as to the time?
Since when?
If you looked at the report from that time, would it help you to refresh?
No, not lately. I hadn't. No.
I'm asking if I show it to you now, will it help you to recall what time it was you received the call?
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
You know me, I approach?
No.
Just look at that and tell me that you recall it. And without reading it after you're done, let me know if that helps.
Yeah, it's around 6 o'clock, so that sounds about right.
Thank you, sir. And what was the nature of that call?
It was a person choking, I believe.
Did you know the age of the person at that time that the call came in?
Yeah, I believe they said it was 2 years old. Yeah.
And what do you do in preparation to go out to that call? If any?
I mean, once we get dispatched, we get in the truck and go to the call, and then on the way over there, we're thinking, well, what are we gonna need? And basically, we're on the engine, so we don't have everything that the ambulance has. So we've got a med bag, an AED, which is a defibrillator, and oxygen, and that's what we went into the house with.
And when you arrived to the house, do you recall how long it took you to get there?
To the call?
Yes.
It's on the report right there. It shouldn't have took more than 5, 7 minutes, 8 minutes maybe.
And when you arrived to that location, what do you do? First, I'm gonna ask you, are you alone or are you with anybody else?
No, me and my lieutenant. There's just 2 of us on the engine.
And what's the lieutenant's name?
Brian Gibson.
And are you the driver or is Lieutenant Gibson the driver?
No, I'm the driver.
And you pull up to 1521 Lincoln Terrace,
Mhm.
and what do you do at that point?
Basically, come off the truck with our gear, let them know we're on the scene, and approach a house and find the patient.
And when you say let them know, you're talking about like you radio
On the
back
radio,
to
yeah.
dispatch, okay.
Mhm.
And when you arrive to the house, is the door open or closed?
I assume it was cool. I really don't remember.
Were you able-
We didn't have any trouble getting in. So.
That was my question. Were you able to make entry?
Yeah.
And when you got inside the house, can you tell me what you observed?
When we walked in, I remember seeing a child and her mother in the living room, and I believe she was attempting CPR.
Had you ever
Or
been,
had been.
had you ever been to that home before?
No.
Did you know the person that you described as the mother? Did you know that person at all?
No.
Do you see that person sitting in the courtroom today?
I believe that's her over there.
And if you could just describe a color of clothing that she has on that you indicated.
I'm sorry.
Can you describe what that person is wearing that you indicate you believe is the person you saw?
That day?
No, what they're wearing right now.
What, green and white dress?
And that is the defendant, Jennifer Rosenbaum. Had you seen her prior to November the 17th of 2015?
I mean, just vaguely. Everything happened so quick.
I'm asking, before going to the house that day, on
Uh-huh.
November the 17th of 2015,
Yeah.
had you ever seen
Oh, no.
Jennifer Rosenbaum? Were you familiar with Jennifer Rosenbaum at all? And you say when you walked in the house, you saw the child. Where was the child?
Laying in the living room floor.
Do you remember if the child was dressed or undressed?
I want to say she had a diaper on, maybe a shirt. It's hard to remember because once we took her to the ambulance, then, of course we removed her shirt. If there was one on her, I just know there wasn't one once we got to working on it.
And so when you get inside the house, you said when you entered in, it appeared that the defendant, Ms. Rosenbaum, was standing over the child.
Well, she was right there with her.
Is the child laying on the couch, on the table, on the floor?
In the
If you can
floor.
recall.
She was in the floor.
On the floor. And if you can recall, was Ms. Rosenbaum standing up? Was she kneeling down? Was she sitting down?
I think she had gotten up when we were there.
So was she actively doing CPR to your recollection when you came in?
I didn't actually see her doing compressions and all that, but I remember seeing she was right there with the child.
But you didn't see her actively doing compressions?
No.
And once you come into the house, what do?
Well, basically, Brian, my partner, takes the child and he starts checking for an airway obstruction because that's what the call come out as, choking on a piece of food. And he's trying to clear the airway. And basically, I believe Rescue 13 called out on the scene. When they did, we didn't even have time to break her bags up, and he just grabbed her up and we took off to the truck with her.
Did you ever have any conversation with the defendant, Ms. Rosenbaum, when you got into the house?
No.
Did she say anything to you that you can recall at all?
No.
And you said that Lieutenant Gibson began to check the victim's airway.
Mm-hmm.
To your knowledge, was there any obstruction found by him?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did you see any vomit or any food particles around the child when you were there?
No.
And you said you barely got able to open up your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever at that point touch the child or do anything to her?
In the house?
Inside the house?
No, Brian had her.
Okay. Did you observe her when Lieutenant Gibson had her?
Yes.
What did you observe at that time?
She was unresponsive.
And when you say unresponsive?
Unconscious.
Was she breathing?
We wasn't sure, you know. We were assuming that she wasn't. So,
And did you check for a pulse?
I believe Brian did, yeah.
Do you know whether or not there was a pulse?
I don't think there was.
No, I would object to him testifying to what he thinks. He testifies to what he knows or doesn't know. He doesn't know. He needs to state he doesn't know.
All right, same objection. This is one of speculation.
Yes, sir. I understand. I'm gonna run you. How long were you inside the house once you arrived? Let me back up. You said that Lieutenant Gibson checked for an airway.
Mm-hmm.
And what else did he do while you were inside the house that you observed?
Well, he would have been checking for a pulse, checking the airway, but he was the one doing it, not me. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yes, she did have one or she didn't have one, because he was the one with his hands on her. I'm standing there observing. So
you observed him checking for an airway, checking for a pulse. Did you observe him doing anything else?
no, by that time we were going. A lot of this was happening in motion.
I understand
Yeah.
that it's happening
Yeah.
full speed, not
Yeah.
question by question as I'm asking.
Yeah.
I understand. Do you recall if you did anything else?
Inside the house?
Yes, sir.
No.
At some point, do y'all leave outside the house?
Yeah.
Where do you go?
We're going straight out the front door, going to the ambulance.
And what happens when you get inside the ambulance?
Well, we put her on the stretcher, and the paramedics on the ambulance is there, and his partner, which is basically the same qualified as I am, and we just start I start compressions on her, doing CPR, and I believe Brian or either Scott, the other paramedic, were getting ready to get the airway intubated.
He believes that's what happened. Again, that's speculation. He believes that what was happening.
Which was?
I would just ask you whatever you recall, and if you don't recall
Yeah.
something, if you can say you don't know,
Okay.
that's fine. Don't want you to speculate again.
Well, one of the two guys were getting an airway established on the child, and I was doing compressions.
And when you say you were doing compressions, what area of the body are you doing compressions on?
In the chest area,
Okay.
between
And-
the nipple line, in between the nipple to nipple.
And are you using one hand, both hands? What are you using to do your compressions with?
I'm using one hand.
And with CPR, is it just compressions that you do? Tell me how CPR works.
Well, we're doing compressions. It's on a child. It's like 30 compressions to 2 breaths. So I'm doing compressions on them. They're breathing her.
And you said they're breathing her. Who's breathing?
I don't remember if it was Scott or Brian. One of them was there giving her oxygen, giving her breaths.
At no point did you have to do the breaths.
No, like I said, I was just doing compressions
And about how long did you do compressions?
all the way to the hospital.
During the time that you were in the ambulance, did you have an opportunity to observe anything else about the child?
Well, I mean, she was in full view of me. So,
What
yeah, I
did you
mean,
observe at that time?
Well, I mean, she had bruises on her. That was probably the main thing that stood out.
Do you recall where you observed those bruises?
Yeah, there were some down around her diaper, top of her diaper line, on her wrist, her arms, legs.
Anywhere else did you see any bruises on her?
Yeah, they were on her back too.
During the time that you were in the ambulance and you were applying compressions, to your knowledge, does this child ever vomit or any food or any obstruction come out of her throat?
I didn't see it.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 1 and previously shown to defense counsel. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
And what is that?
bruising on her back.
And is that the child in the way you saw her on November the 17th of 2015?
Pretty much.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of what you observed?
Yes.
I'd ask the State's Exhibit number 1 be entered into evidence.
Any objection? Page 1, piece of paper.
And may I publish it, Judge?
You may.
And you may have to turn around, Mr. Jones. In any cases in which you've had to administer CPR on a child, have you seen bruises like that before?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross.
Mr. Jones, did you check the drains of the kitchen drains?
Did I check the drains?
Yes.
No, I'm not a plumber.
You didn't check the floor either, you
What area?
the area in the kitchen area.
No.
And you testified here today that you did not see her doing compressions, that she had gotten up by the time you had gotten there.
Well, I just remember my partner saying that, I believe he said she told him that she was doing compressions, but she was there by the child.
Isn't it true, Mr. Jones, that you wrote a statement about this case?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that true?
I believe, I sent one in.
And isn't it true in your statement, you said you saw the mother over the child performing CPR?
Yeah.
That's what you said back in November of 2015.
Okay.
Is that correct?
If that's what I wrote down, that's what I said.
By your approach, Your Honor.
You may.
All right. Yeah.
That's what you said, is that you saw her doing compressions on the child.
Well, I saw her over her.
What did you say in your report?
Yeah, I said I saw her saw the mother over the child performing CPR in the living room floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
All right. Any brief?
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. Step down. And any objections, witness being excused?
None from the State, Your Honor.
Any objections, witness being excused?
No objection, Your Honor. We were just asking for.
Okay, am I permanently,
Pardon me?
The picture not be projected on the side.
Okay.
am I permanently excused?
Mr. Jones, you're excused, which means that you're released from the case.
All right. Thank you.
Deputy, was that your opinion as well?
Yes, I got almost to him, and then he said,
Okay. What is it that the parties are requesting that I do?
Your Honor, I would first ask that maybe we speak with him and let him know the urgency and importance of him being awake and paying attention, because this is a very important case and he needs to be paying attention throughout the course of the trial. if it continues to happen, the state's preference would be to remove him and have the alternate replace him that can pay attention to each and every witness that comes forward.
Okay, so you are taking the position right now that whatever damage has been done by his sleeping is something that we can overlook, and that we can just warn him and move on? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, I think so. It's been one witness that's testified so far, Your Honor. I don't, because I was questioning that witness, I don't know if he was paying attention. I would just ask that the court inquire of him, has he been able to keep up and understand what's going on so far, and if he would be able to do so through the duration of the trial initially, would be my request.
Ms. Ball?
You know, I would defer to the court everyone's experience with this. I mean, I'm concerned that he's not listening and he's asleep. I don't know that we can overlook the fact that he has missed the first witness.
Okay, let's have him come out. Is it the jury box, please?
Yes.
Do we know the name of this juror? It's going to 7th seat.
Mr. Tyrone Cathy.
Mr. Kenneth, let's have him come into the jury box, please. Right there, please. Just have a seat. Are you juror number 60?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sir, there has been a concern raised that you are sleeping during court. Is that correct?
I don't think I'm sleeping, I just have a hand on my head.
Okay. And there was a concern raised that you had to be awoken in order to leave the jury box. Is that true?
No, I was already woke, I was just sitting there.
Well, there is, obviously, this is an extremely important case. Frankly, any case that we're trying is an important case. And we're going to need you to be paying attention. You understand? Yes or no? Okay. Thank you. You can step back into the jury. Okay, so the juror is denied being asleep, and he's denied the need to have been awoken. Is there anything that either of the parties are requesting that I do?
Not at this time, no. He's denying it. As an officer of the court, I don't know what I observed, but he's denying it on the record. So, Your Honor, I would just say you just pay close attention to him throughout the rest of the trial.
All right, then we'll go ahead and ask the, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Then let's go ahead and have the jury come back out to the jury box.
Put your hand down. Please state your true and correct name for the record.
All right, Donald Cleveland, Henry County Coroner.
And you mentioned you're the Henry County Coroner. What exactly does that mean?
Coroner is responsible for determining, working along with the police rather, to determine the cause and manner of death. But I have to report cases to the medical examiner's office to seek further guidance on whether an exam is going to be performed or not.
Okay. You also mentioned the term medical examiner. What is a medical examiner?
Medical examiner is a certified medical doctor, board certified rather, pathologist.
And so what is the difference between the county coroner and the medical examiner?
Basically, you could sum it up that I'm the eyes and ears for the medical examiner until the body gets in their possession.
And does every county in the state of Georgia have a medical examiner?
All except 4 of them.
Okay. And why don't the
Oh, excuse me, all counties have medical examiner?
I'm sorry, do all counties have a coroner?
all except 4 of them,
And why did the 4 of those counties not have a coroner?
because they have the medical examiner system where their counties are so large that they chose to abolish the office and go forward with the medical examiner.
The medical examiner that you provide cases for, who is the medical examiner with? What agency?
Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
And do you routinely work or send cases to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Yes.
Are all of the cases, though, that you respond to, do all of them go to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
No.
What makes that determination as to a case that goes there versus one that does not?
Depending on medical history of the person, and the law says anybody, I believe, under the age of 7 is required to have an autopsy.
So if a child is 2 years of age, the law requires them to have an autopsy?
Yes, or the medical examiner, if the child has was born with some kind of genetic issues, then the medical examiner can override that and say, we're not going to be doing an exam.
What are some of the qualifications to become the coroner in a county?
The state just basically says you have to be 25 years or older, live in the county in which you're going to serve for at least 2 years prior to running, be a U.S. citizen, be a registered voter, and have a high school diploma or GED.
Is there any medical training that is required to be a coroner?
No.
Can you tell me how long you have been the coroner here in Henry County?
I've been doing this full-time since 2010, and prior to that I was part-time deputy coroner for 2 years.
And what kind of work did you do prior to becoming the coroner?
I was a funeral director and embalmer.
Is the coroner an elected position?
It is?
And when were you, you said you were appointed in 2010.
Yes.
How have you remained the coroner since then?
In 2012, I believe, was election year, and 2016 was election year, and both times I prevailed.
And is there any training that's associated with being a county coroner?
We have to attend 24 hours a year training at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center.
On average, since you've been the Henry County coroner, how many cases do you see per year?
Over 300.
And without being flip, are all of these people by definition deceased?
Yes,
So you are not called out unless someone is deceased, is that correct?
that is correct.
Have you ever responded to cases where a child has been the decedent has been a juvenile?
Yes.
And do you see as many of those as you do adult cases?
No.
Did you respond to the death of Laila Daniel?
I did.
And was that on November 17th of 2015?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury how you first became involved in this particular case?
Okay. I was notified by the Henry County 911 Center. They had received a call from the nursing supervisor at the hospital stating that they had had a child to come in deceased, and was notifying me of that, and so I instructed the nurse to secure the room, and I would be en route to the hospital.
And you instructed them to secure the room. Why do you do that?
To preserve any kind of evidence that might be there, and that's really if I go up there for a gunshot victim of a 90-year-old or whether it be a child. I mean, it's just protocol.
Were you given any history or any reason as to how the child ended up at the emergency room?
The nurse told me the child came in via ambulance.
You
That
would object to what the nurse told you, that's hearsay?
In this case, I think it's not hearsay. We're not offering for the truth of the matter asserted. It's simply to further his investigation as to why he responded and how he did, or why he did what he did.
Closing on your objection. Closing on your objection.
Nothing further than
Overruled.
You can
the nurse instructed me that the child came in via Henry County ambulance and was pronounced deceased, and that the child, it was reported that the child was choking, and the reason the EMS responded.
When you arrived at the hospital, what did you observe?
When I got to the hospital, there was a deputy standing guard of the room, and I proceeded to make my way to the nurse's station and met with the nursing supervisor who called me, and then she escorted me to the room.
And when you went into the room, what did you see?
There was a decedent child lying on the bed, covered with a sheet.
And what did you do after you first walked into the room?
I put rubber gloves on to work with the crime scene technician to take photos of the child.
And what were your initial observations when you saw the child's body?
Initial observations was, wow, there was markings all over the child.
Have you, as the county coroner, ever responded to other situations in which resuscitative methods were used?
Yes.
Have you, and I want to be a little bit more specific, have you responded to other cases where CPR was used?
Yes.
To attempt to resuscitate?
Right.
Have you also responded to any situations where the Heimlich maneuver was attempted?
No.
Okay. In the situations that you observed with CPR, was what you saw in Laila Daniel's body consistent with anything you had seen?
Yes.
What was consistent?
There was a airway in place that was secured by a strap around the neck. She had a bandage over her right leg that, and on the left leg, she had what was called an IO, which is an interosseous, which is basically a mechanical method of putting it into the bone so that when they issue drugs, it goes into the body very quick to for the resuscitative efforts.
I want to back up. You had said that you had seen bruising on Laila's body. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was bruising that you saw consistent with other cases that you responded to where resuscitative methods had been used?
No.
Anywhere close?
No.
I want to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibits 2 through 75, which has previously been shown to defense. And sir, have you had an opportunity to look through those exhibits?
I have.
And what are those? What are exhibits 2 through 75?
Those are exhibits of the child lying in the hospital room, the photographs taken.
Were you present when these photographs were taken?
I was.
Were you assisting in taking these photographs?
Yes.
And do these photographs fairly and accurately represent the condition that you saw the body on November 17, 2015?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time I would move to admit States Exhibits 2 through 75 into evidence.
Your Honor, at this time, we would object to 2 through 75. I think we've got some duplicative pictures.
If there's a specific, there are many pictures in there, in fact 74, but some of them may be of the same part of the body, one of which is with is without the measuring device, and the other is with the measuring device as well.
This is my question.
Yes.
Does every picture depict something new or different?
Yes, with the exception of sometimes there's a measuring device and sometimes there is not. And I can show the court would like to see the
What we're trying to stay away from is cumulative. And so, you wish to look at those? You've looked at them? And do you disagree that they are each of something different?
I don't think they're each of something different, no. Some of them are repetitive.
Okay, I'm going to have you get them one by one, not as a group exhibit.
Okay. Do you recognize States Exhibit 2?
Yes.
What do you recognize States Exhibit 2 today?
That was the child lying on the hospital bed is when I walked in the room and removed the sheet.
Okay. And does that fairly and accurately represent the way that you observed the child when you first walked in?
It is.
Your Honor, at the time I moved to admit States Exhibit 2.
Admitted?
And what are we looking at in States Exhibit 2?
You're looking at a deceased child lying there on the hospital bed with the resuscitative measures in her mouth, specifically in airway. We have 2 EKG pads, and there is a AED pad on the upper right side of the child. And then on the legs there, you have the bandage, and then on the left leg, you get the pink color is that interosseous, the IO.
Okay. And there's actually a pointer in there if you want to point to some of the things that you just talked about. What are the items that you just spoke about?
Right there is the airway that is used for resuscitative efforts. This right here is a Velcro piece that is used to hold the airway in place. Right there is the AED pad attached. Here are the EKG pads. Here, right here is the bandage covered leg. And there is what's called the interosseous.
Okay. And is this kind of an overview picture that you take at the very beginning?
Yes.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 3. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 3?
Yes.
What do you recognize State's Exhibit 3 to be?
That is another overall shot, but this one shows more of the pediatric AED pad on.
Okay. And is this image closer than the initial overview photo you took?
It is.
And does this fairly inaccurately represent what you saw Laila Daniel on that day?
Yes.
Can I move to State's Exhibit 3?
Objective sentence Exhibit 3 being cumulative, it's the same picture.
Overall.
Okay. So what are the things that we see here in this particular image?
Again, here's a more definitive view of the AED pad, and then again the airway, the EKG pads.
Okay. And earlier you mentioned bruising. Do you see any examples of bruising in this particular image?
I do. I see some right there. I see some here and here, and some there, and I see some over here.
And does the glare make it a little difficult to see some of those?
Yes.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5. What do you recognize State's 5 to be?
This is a more definitive up-close shot of the placement of the airway
Okay.
tube.
And does this fairly inaccurately represent the way you saw Laila Daniel that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to State's 5.
It's fine. And what are we looking at here?
A more up-close shot of the airway, and then there's some mucus right there.
Okay. I want to show you State's 6. What do you recognize State's 6 to be?
This is going to be the right side photo of her lying on the bed, of the facial area and upper body.
And it's fairly inaccurate. It represents Laila Daniel on that
Yes.
day? Your Honor, I move to admit State 6.
State 6 is admitted.
And what are we looking at in State 6?
Right here, we're looking again at the airway tube placement, and then the pediatric AED pad, and then we gather some bruising going on right there.
And what part of the body are you referring to when you say, when you were pointing to some bruising that you observed?
That's going to be more so on the upper left side of the chest area.
And it is, am I accurate when I say it this way?
Yes.
Okay, so kind of almost near my shoulder?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you State 7. What do you recognize State 7 to be?
This is going to be the left side of the child.
Okay. And is this fairly inaccurately represent Laila Daniel?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit State 7.
State 7 is admitted.
And what are we looking at on this picture?
The opposite side of the picture showing the placement of the airway tube.
Okay. And in this particular photo, do you see any, can you start to see any injury in the head area?
Not right off, I can't because of the glare.
Okay. We'll get to some other photos.
Stage 9, what do you recognize stage 9 to be?
This is a facial shot of the left side of her face.
Okay. And this fairly accurately represents what you saw that day?
It does.
I moved to admit stage 9.
Admitted states 9.
What are we looking at here?
Here, again, some mucus there, and there were some markings here that were, scale was placed to get a definitive measurement of it.
Now, when you take these photographs, are you documenting just everything that you see?
Yes.
So you're not definitively saying every single marking is used?
That is correct,
But at this point, you're just documenting everything you see?
so that I can report it to the medical examiner.
Okay. And so is this something that you thought was worth documenting?
Yes.
Showing to show you states 10, what do you recognize states 10 to be?
That would be a photo shot of underneath the neck of the child.
And does this fairly accurately represent that area of the body that you observed on November 17th?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 10.
No objection.
Admitted states 10.
If I can, I might turn off another light and it might glare a little bit better.
Well, that's fine.
These lights? I just need the one above our table. Is that better, Dave? We'll go with that. What are we observing on stage 10?
Right here, since we had already had so many different shots of the airway, we are focused more on the markings here on the neck.
And is that, what part of the face are you looking at there?
That will be right underneath, underneath the area of the chin.
Okay, so underneath the chin? So kind of, if I'm pointing correct, I just want to help, is it kind of down here?
Yes, kind of down here.
What are we looking at in, skip that, we'll do states 12.
The front part of her head, forehead.
And this fairly and accurately represents what you saw on that day?
It is.
I move to admit states 12.
No objection.
States 12 is admitted.
What are we looking at in states 12?
We were just notating the markings here.
And what are we looking at in states 13?
Basically the same thing as that one, but it has the scale there.
And what are we looking at in states 14?
Here we have scale and some markings on the face that are not the same as those markings.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 13.
State 13 and 14 are admitted.
And is this just the one we see with that same mark that we were just looking at, but with the scale?
Yes.
All right. How about states 14? You said that these were different marks?
Yes, we have one there and one there.
And again, you're just kind of documenting everything?
Yes, sir.
I want to show you what's been marked as states 15, 16, 17, and 18. What do you recognize these to be?
These are pictures of the child's eyes, left and right.
Okay. And do they fairly and accurately represent what you saw that day?
They do.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 15, 16, 17, and 18.
No objection.
And why do
15, 16, 17, and 18.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Judge. And why do you specifically look at the eyes?
We looked for any types of pinpoint hemorrhages that would be sort of red in color. They are called petechial hemorrhages, and basically it is a indication that there could be some type of asphyxiation around the death of the person.
What do you mean by the term asphyxiation?
Strangulation, asphyxiation, going up behind somebody, choking them.
Okay. And I'm just going to go through states 15 through 18. Did you see any signs of that?
No.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked as states 19, 20, and 21. Do you recognize these exhibits?
I do.
What do you recognize them today?
Pictures of her ear
It appears to be her left ear.
Okay. And that is fairly inaccurate to represent what you saw in that particular death?
Yes.
Your Honor, move to admit states 19 to 21.
Your Honor, I think those are the same pictures. As the court reviewed.
Your Honor, the state's response is that the different views of that particular injury are important for the jury to be able to see.
States 19, 20, and 21 are admitted.
Thank you, Judge. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 19?
Taking notation of the markings on the ear here.
And when you say markings, what do you mean by that?
There's some discolorations there, and we were just notating that for the file, so that again, I can report it to the medical examiner.
State's 20.
Same thing, but this time it's with the scale.
And how about State's 21? What are we looking at here?
A different view of it, of the markings there.
Okay. And by markings, what kind of markings would?
Discolorations.
Do State's Exhibit 22. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 22?
Appears of the ear again. And it looks, to be based upon this, looks to be the left ear.
Okay. And is this fair and accurate representation?
It does.
Okay. Your Honor, move to admit State's 22.
No objection.
Admitted, States 22.
What are we looking at in State's 22?
Just a more, I think she tried to give more of a scale picture there, but it looks like it's blurred. But there's some markings right there on the inside of the ear.
And what are those markings consistent with anything?
They're just discolorations.
I want to show you States 25. What do you recommend States 25 and 26 to be?
This looks to be this scalp of the child, and there are some markings there that were documented.
Did it fairly accurately represent what you saw that day?
It does.
Your Honor, move to admit States 25 and 26.
States 25 and 26 are admitted.
And what are we looking at in States 25?
There's some markings here and there.
Okay. And what part of the body are we looking at here?
Again, from those pictures, it looks like to be in this area here.
So you are pointing to what area of your body?
Around the scalp area here, the occipital region.
To the top of your head?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Right, not occipital, more than that.
Show you what's the mark in States 27, 28, 27, 28, 29, and 31. Do you recognize these?
I do.
And what do you recognize in the state?
Photos of different discolorations on the body.
These fairly and accurately represent what you saw on November 17th.
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit States 27, 28, 29, and 31.
No objection.
Admitted.
And what are we looking at? First of all, what part of the body are we looking at here?
That looks to be around the neck area on the left side of the, below the left ear.
And what did you note of interest in this particular photograph?
The discolorations there. I think that like this whole area here and in there.
How about States 28? What are we looking at in States 28?
A more close-up shot of those markings.
States 29.
Again, scale markings.
And States 31, what are we looking at in States 31? What part of the body, I should say?
That's going to be around the right side of the mid-chest area. You have your electrical defibrillator pad, and below it, we were documenting the markings here.
Okay. States 32 and 33, will you recognize these two?
Photos taken of the left side here.
These fairly accurately represent what you saw on November 17th of 2015.
Who does?
Your Honor, I move to admit states 32 and 33.
No objection.
Admit 32 and 33.
What are we looking at? What part of the body are we looking at?
And we're looking at this area right here, and we have some bruising going on there and here.
Right, and just so the record's clear, when you say right here, what part of the body are you pointing to?
Left side,
Left side. What part of the chest are you pointing to?
around the nipple area.
Was that above or in relation to the nipple? Where was the bruising that you saw?
It's up above it, probably, I don't have a scale there, so we'll just say a half inch, maybe. And then you have some bruising here, and then underneath the left arm over there.
And when you have responded to other situations where CPR has been used, do you ever see bruising on the side and upper part of the chest like that from CPR?
No.
States Exhibit 33. What are we looking at in States Exhibit 33?
Looking at markings of the bruising below the nipple line, over on the left side, again, underneath the forearm.
So we're getting closer to the armpit, is that correct? All right. I want to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibit 34. What do you recognize States 34 to be?
The left side of her torso and her left arm.
Okay. Does that fairly and accurately represent what you saw on November 17th of 2015?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit States 34.
Admitted. States 34.
And what are we looking at in States 34?
We were notating some markings there, with more so the left arm, how there was discolorations on that arm.
I'm going to show you States 36, 37, 38, and 39. What do you recognize these to be?
Pictures of her right arm.
And they fairly and accurately represent what you saw on November 17th of 2015.
They do.
Your Honor, I move to admit those exhibits. Your Honor, that's fine. After discussion with the defense counsel, we will admit 36, 37, and 38.
All right. Any objection? 36, 37, 38. Admitted.
What are we looking at here in States 36?
Well, a couple of things. One, we wanted to make sure we got a picture of an armband, definitely identifying who we were there for. But you have some markings here and some markings up here.
Okay. And what arm are we looking at?
That is the right arm.
What are we looking at in States 37?
You were looking at the inside of the right hand when we were documenting bruising there.
And so what part of the body were you pointing to?
That would be right here.
So on the palm, correct?
On the right hand.
All right. What about States 38?
We were notating the different markings on the right arm on the underside of it.
If I neglected to ask you already, about how long after Laila was pronounced dead were these photographs taken?
Approximately an hour and a half.
I'm going to show you some marking stage exhibits 40, 42, 43, and 44. Do you recognize them?
I do.
What do you recognize them to be?
Pictures of her left hand.
Okay. Do they fairly and accurately represent, do they fairly and accurately represent what you observed on that particular day?
They do.
Your Honor, I admit States 40, 42, 43, and 44 net minutes.
For a minute.
What are we looking at in states 40?
This blood stain right there,
In states 41, 42.
more blood stains, and that looks to be on the inside palm of the left hand.
Did you note any bruising on the inside palm of the left hand? If you need me to, I can show you the actual image itself.
Can I see the actual image?
Sure.
I'll point that out. Maybe I can see it there.
Okay.
Right here, what appears to be bruising.
And is that the same general area as the other hand that you observed that same similar?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the palm. Here.
States 43, what are we looking at?
Appears to be some type of blood stain there.
Okay. And again, just documenting everything you see.
Just documenting
States 44, what are we looking at?
the markings right there and with the scale.
I am going to show you what's been previously marked as states exhibits 45, 46, 48, 50, and 51. Do you recognize these documents?
I do.
And what do you recognize as today?
Pictures of the abdominal area.
Do they fairly accurately represent what you saw on that particular day?
They do.
Now I move to admit states 45, 46, 48, 50, and 51.
For a minute.
What are we seeing in states 45?
There's the navel, 2 EKG pads, markings there, and markings there. And there.
Do you also see any areas of discoloration in the skin?
Yeah, discoloration in the skin, yes, there and there.
How about any discoloration that would be lighter in color?
Lighter in
Yes.
color? Maybe this there, based upon the lighting.
Okay. How about states exhibit 46? What are we looking at?
More discolorations there. That was next to the EKG pad.
So in states 46, can you just help orient us what part of the body are we looking at here?
You are looking at the lower left abdominal.
Okay. And what part, like, I guess, what bone would that be near?
Your pelvic bone is going to be right there.
How about states exhibit 48? What are we looking at in states 48?
You're looking at the right lower abdominal area. And again, pelvic bone being there, discolorations there, and then some type of skin slippage there.
What do you mean by skin slippage?
Skin tear.
So that's not a bruise, that's something different.
That's something different, yes.
What are we looking at in states 50?
That area there. And the some discolorations there, of course, with the scale.
And how about states exhibit 51? What are we looking at in states exhibit 51?
Can I see that?
Sure.
Get my bearings. It appears that is the right side of the child, a little further back, since the diaper is right there. And the pelvic bone is going to be about right in there.
And what are you pointing to? You were pointing, you were moving the pointer around some areas of the body. What were you pointing to?
The markings are there, and then of course the diaper, and then the scale.
I want to move on to states exhibits 52, 53, 54, and 56. What are we looking at here?
You are looking at the genital area of the child.
And those fairly accurately represent what you saw on that particular day.
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 52, 53, 54, and 56.
Rebecca?
What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 52?
We were notating the markings here, those have already been previously discussed, and so we're taking an overall picture of there.
And so this area that we're looking at was previously underneath the diaper,
Yes.
and you were pointing to the areas, certain areas. What parts of the body were you pointing to?
Leg folds right there, and then the pubic area there.
And those are all areas that you observed bruising?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 53. What are we looking at in State's 53?
A more close area of the vaginal area on both sides.
In all the years that you've been in the coroner, have you ever seen CPR-related injuries in the vaginal area?
No.
What about State's Exhibit 54?
That is on the inside portion of the right leg.
And just so we orient the jury, to the right is the vagina?
Yes.
And you said that was the interior portion of the right leg?
Yes.
And what are we looking at here?
That we were notating the discolorations there.
What about State's Exhibit 56? What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 56?
The discolorations there.
And is that I guess what's the angle of this particular shot?
Standing over the child on the bed, rolling her leg toward me.
So are we looking at her from the back side at this point?
The picture was taken, yes, on the back side.
State 75, what are we looking at in State 75?
The rectal area.
And that fairly accurately represent what you saw on that particular day?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit State 75. And what are we looking at in State 75?
We were notating the discolorations there.
I can move down, sorry.
Notating the discolorations.
Was there anything about the anus that stood out to you in particular?
No, no.
As the coroner, did you have any concerns about any dilated anus?
No.
Did you personally have any concerns about possible sexual abuse during your investigation?
No.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibits 57, 58, and 59. We're looking at these three exhibits.
We're looking at the lower legs, or the mid leg down.
And those fairly accurately represent what you saw on that day.
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit States 57, 58, 59.
Okay.
And what are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 57?
All right, that's just an overall shot of the lower extremities, showing the bandage and the interosseous, of course, along with the discolorations.
Okay. And I'll show you State's Exhibit 58, or some of those discolorations you previously saw.
Yes.
And States 59, is that just the discolorations with the markings?
That is correct.
Show you States Exhibit 60. What do you recognize State 60 to be?
The back side of the lower extremities.
And that fairly accurately represent what we saw on that day.
It does.
Have there been any modifications, alterations, or deletions to that photograph?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit States Exhibit 60 into evidence.
Admit.
Well, I'm up here. I will also have you authenticate State 61, 62, 64, and 65. Do you recognize those states exhibits?
Yes, those are pictures of the child's ankles.
Okay. I'm going to show, Your Honor, at this time I do States Exhibit 61, 62, 64, and 65 in evidence.
Admitted?
What are we looking at in State 60?
That is the back side of the lower extremities of the child. So basically, if you describe it as we rolled the child over on her stomach and was taking a picture of the lower part, notating again the discolorations.
And what are we looking at in State 61?
That is her left ankle.
And in State 62, what are we looking at? And I can bring it up to you if you need to do.
No, that's the left ankle, but it's more the discoloration right here.
How about States 64?
That's the right foot ankle area, and again, notating the discolorations.
And State 65?
Same thing, but with this. Yes, these are different photos of the back side of the child.
And did they fairly and accurately represent what you saw on that particular day?
They do.
Your Honor, I submit the States 67, 68, 69, 70, 72, and 73 to 74.
3 minutes.
What are we looking at in States 67?
That's the back side of the child, the whole back. And we were notating all the discolorations.
And have you ever responded to other child deaths in your career?
Yes.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
No.
How about States Exhibit 68?
More in close-up photo of all the markings.
States Exhibit 69?
The lower portion of the back and the markings.
What are we looking at in States Exhibit 70?
This is the upper back and then the markings there.
States Exhibit 72?
Markings with the scale.
And what are we
Again, on the back side.
on the back side? 73.
Again, markings with the scale on the back, since there's the top of the buttock area.
And State 74.
Again, pictures of the back side.
Have you, in all the cases, whether adult or pediatric, have you ever seen anything like this when you went out resuscitated methods that they used?
No.
Now, are you aware, are you familiar with a child by the name of Millie Place? You also familiar with that child?
Mm-hmm.
Did you actually meet with Millie or examine Millie on November 17th of 2015?
No.
And why is that?
I don't mean to be funny, but she wasn't dead.
Let me ask you, did you ever interact with either Jennifer Rosenbaum or Joseph Rosenbaum on November 17th of 2015?
I, myself, along with 2 other personnel, went into the quiet room and met with them. And that's the first time I had actually physically talked with her.
Okay. And when you walked in, what were your initial observations?
It's a small room, and there was 4 to 5 people in there, and it was hot.
Did Ms. Rosenbaum say anything to you?
I introduced myself, and I asked her to tell me what transpired, and she proceeded to tell me that she found the child shaking in the high chair after she had come back from going and getting Millie ready, because I believe she was going to go to Ms. Rosenbaum was going to go to a commissioner's meeting.
If you could speak up just a little for us.
I said, she said that she found Laila in the high chair shaking when she came back from getting Millie ready to go, Mrs. Rosenbaum was going to go to a Board of Commissioners meeting.
And what did she say that happened after she came back from getting Millie ready?
That she saw the child shaking in the high chair. She picked the child up, called 911, and performed CPR and until the EMS arrived.
And that was the history that you received from Ms. Rosenbaum?
Yes, and that she was possibly choking on chicken nuggets.
Did that history appear to be consistent with the examination you did of Laila Daniel in the hospital that day?
Not really, no.
And why do you say that?
Your Honor, objection. He's not been qualified as an expert in medicine. Making such determination.
I'm simply asking if it's consistent with the other, let me ask it this way. Is it consistent with other cases in which you've responded to with perhaps a similar history?
No.
Do you know either Jennifer Rosenbaum or Joseph Rosenbaum prior to that day?
No, I do not.
Have you ever heard of either of them prior to that day?
No.
Have you ever, let me ask you this, do you ever attend the Board of Commissioners meetings?
I don't attend them personally. However, I do watch it on the internet.
Okay. Have you ever seen either Ms. Rosenbaum or Mr. Rosenbaum at any of the meetings that you watch on the internet?
Yes, Ms. Rosenbaum would come to the meetings, and during the public speaking session, she would get up and voice concerns.
And what were your thoughts when you saw Ms. Rosenbaum giving those public concerns?
I applauded her, young age and tackling the county. So
And again, you're an elected official.
I am.
Tell me a little bit about the demeanor of Ms. Rosenbaum when you were meeting with her in that hospital room.
It was different than meeting with other child families, not of the same death, but just child in general. I didn't observe much emotion, like her eyes wasn't red or swollen like she had been crying. It's not to say she hadn't been, but I was just a little struck by that. And then during that time we were talking with her, Mr. Rosenbaum come in because if I remember correctly, I think he was at work.
Okay. And what did you observe when Mr. Rosenbaum came in?
He had the look on his face like, what has happened? Just because I'm sure it was a phone call.
Object to him speculating about what he's sure of.
That's fine. Can you just say what you, not speculate, just exactly what you observed?
I observed him come in and he sat down beside Ms. Rosenbaum.
Okay. To be fair, could the response that you saw from Ms. Rosenbaum, could it also be consistent with shock?
It could be, yes.
Now, what occurs after you were done with photographing the body? What happens to the body at that point?
At that time, the hospital was instructed to place the child downstairs in the morgue until I could notify the GBI and arrange an autopsy. And then once notification to the GBI was done, they tell me to have the child there on a particular day, and then I made arrangements for the child to be picked up at the hospital and transported to the GBI.
And more specifically, how did the child get from the hospital to the GBI? Do you personally take her or something?
No, a transportation company that I employ as the coroner transported her.
And is this the protocol that you use for all deaths where the GBI will be performing an autopsy?
Yes.
Do you recall the date that the body was released to the GBI?
November the 18th, I think.
And that would have been the day after the death?
Yes.
Did you attend the autopsy in this case?
I did.
And do you attend all autopsies?
No,
Why did you attend this particular one?
because of the different bruising and the circumstances surrounding things.
Now, when you attend the autopsy, are you actually participating?
I am not. I am standing away from the remains. The morgue technician along with the pathologist are around the remains.
So you're not actually performing any portion of the autopsy itself?
I'm not even touching the person.
Nothing further this time.
You still need the light off.
My name is Maria Mull. I just have a few questions for you. You don't have a medical degree, is that correct?
That is correct.
So you've got no medical training whatsoever.
That is correct.
And you have testified here today that you have seen other deaths from CPR,
Yes, ma'am.
or where CPR was applied.
Yes, ma'am.
And were those deaths where CPR was correctly applied?
What's your version of correctly?
Well, what I'm asking you is, do you know whether CPR was correctly applied in the case of Laila Daniel? Do you know that?
I can't. I wasn't there, so I cannot definitively
So
say
you
that.
don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
And the bodies that you had examined, that you said you had examined, who'd been subjected to Heimlich maneuver, that was one child, is that correct?
No, I have never had. I said I've never seen anybody CPR done on somebody with the Heimlich maneuver.
Okay, well, let's be clear here. There's two separate things. I don't know if you know that. One is the Heimlich maneuver. Do you know what the Heimlich maneuver is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is that?
That is where you stand behind a person who is choking and you perform thrust into their abdominal area to try to dislodge the object.
And you have never seen the results of the Heimlich maneuver, have you? On a child.
On a child, no, ma'am.
And you have never seen the results of CPR on a child that was improperly done, where adult CPR was performed.
No, ma'am.
You've never seen that.
No,
So
ma'am.
your testimony here today that this case is dissimilar from your other cases would be understandable, wouldn't it?
You would have to form that opinion yourself.
But clearly, you have not seen prior to this date, you have not seen a Heimlich maneuver on a child, and you have not seen an improperly administered CPR on a child, have you?
No, ma'am, because I don't respond to the scenes when it's being performed.
And you told Mr. Chase that this did not look like a CPR case, like CPR cases that you would see, correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the CPR cases that you have seen were not cases where adult CPR was applied on the child, were they?
That is correct.
And these cases were not Heimlich maneuver cases on the child, were they?
No, ma'am.
Now, you basically took those pictures that we saw just a moment ago, and you just document what you see, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you saw bruising going from the pubic area on up, correct?
I would say bruising from head to toe.
It was not consistent bruising all the way down. The child had bruises on her legs, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And had bruising on the back,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Now, did you, in fact, report to the, you said you were the eyes and ears of the medical examiner, correct?
Yes, yes.
Did you, in fact, report to the medical examiner?
I did. Not to, I'm going to be specific here, not to the medical examiner themselves, to one of the death investigative personnel that answered the phone.
Ms. Lovelace?
No, I called the GBI main number and reported.
With regards to, did you, in fact, tell GBI that Jennifer had told you they were seated at the table eating chicken tenders when the choking occurred?
That's what, yes.
And did you tell them that the child was flailing in her chair?
I don't recall flailing, I said shaking.
See if this refreshes your recollection.
Sure. If it's there, then I probably did say yes, ma'am. But you got to remember, I call in so many deaths, I can't tell you exactly
But this
verbiage.
one was, I'm sorry, this one was different, right?
Any child death's different.
And you did report that she was flailing in her chair,
Yes, ma'am.
which could account
Flailing.
for some of the bruising on the arms, correct?
I don't have a medical degree, so you'd have to ask the doctor about that.
And you saw bruising inside the ear, as if something had been stuck in the ear.
I wouldn't call it bruising, I'd say discolorations.
Discolorations. Now, you were not concerned with the dilation of the anus. Why is that?
Because it wasn't reported to me that that was part of the report that was given to the hospital.
Okay. But you were there documenting.
Yeah, that's just part of standard procedure.
But you yourself, based on your experience, were not concerned about the dilation.
That's correct.
And the reason you weren't concerned is because that's normal at death. A lot of times the anus will dilate.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Ms. Moore, Mr. Chris.
I want to show you, Ms. Moll referenced the abdominal area, so I just wanted to go back there real quick. She mentioned bruising on the abdominal area, correct? Right. Do you see any bruising in the center part of the stomach area? As in, like, not on the side.
Like that area?
No, in the come down. Yeah, it's just above the diaper. Do you see any bruising in that kind of general area above you, right?
Just
Yeah,
that area right there. That's it.
Okay. You don't see it, so you see it on the sides, but not in the center, correct?
That's correct. I don't see anything right there.
You can see. That was the only thing I had regarding the projector. The flailing in the chair comment that was written in your report, would that have been something that you, part of the history that you received from the defendant?
Yeah, yeah.
So that would have been
Shaking and flailing pretty much are the same.
But that would have been something that she told you out of her mouth, correct?
It possibly could have been, yes.
But we talked about before, you only respond when a person dies, correct?
Correct.
So is it safe to say you've never seen someone die from the Heimlich maneuver?
I've never seen somebody die from the Heimlich maneuver, no, sir.
And one last question, do you have any political vendettas against either defendant?
No, I don't know.
Nothing.
Yes, because isn't it true that when you met Miss Jennifer Rosenbaum at the hospital, and she introduced herself to you, you said, "Oh, you're that Jennifer Rosenbaum," isn't that true?
Yes, ma'am.
If I can follow up on that briefly. Can you explain a little bit more about what you said, or what you meant by that?
Because she's the one that I've seen on the commissioners' meetings when I'd watch them on the internet or over the internet, and noticed that she was the one coming up speaking during public comments.
Did you have any ill will at all towards Ms. Rosenbaum when you said that particular comment?
No.
Nothing further.
Ms. Moll, anything else? Thank you, Mr. Cleveland, you can step down.
Am I permanently excused?
Yes, party, you have any objections? You may be excused.
Thank you, Judge.